This is the first in a series of videos to try to give you a quick review of Global 10. Again, starting in June of 2017, the Regents will only cover topics from 1750 onward. So that's what this video is going to take a look at. All right, with that, let's get it started. All right, first thing we need to do is take a look at where we're at in Europe in 1750. Specifically, we're going to take a look at Europe. We're really going to focus here. In Europe at this time, this is known as the Age of Absolutism. This is where you have the kings and queens of Europe ruling based on the idea of divine right. That's the idea that the authority and power to rule comes from God. That the monarchs derive their power from God. The society is divided among the nobility and the peasants. That the landowning class, the aristocracy, has a higher social position, and you're born into your social class and they do not change. There is very limited or no social mobility. If you're born a peasant, you die a peasant. And this is, of course, a time of when, like if a peasant, ran into somebody, they, into some landowner, some of the nobles, they would, oh, hello, sir, hello, lady, and they would bow and they would scrape, and they wouldn't even be able to look them in the eye, because this social class thing was something where everyone accepted it, that if you were born a peasant, you were not as good as a noble, that these were better people, that God had made them better than you. And this was completely accepted. People were born into a social class. They thought they deserved it. They thought this was their role in society, and it was really not questioned for a very, very long time. Until this movement, until really you get into the Enlightenment and the French Revolution. This is the first time where people are going to challenge this idea of divine right and start looking at authority as something not coming from God, but coming from the people. All right, let's take a look. If you want to think about the Enlightenment, the key thing you need to remember is the Enlightenment is based on this idea of using your reason, of using your human brain to understand the world. And that idea, that concept should sound familiar. If you, from 9th grade, you should have studied the scientific revolution. If you remember, before the scientific revolution, if you wanted to understand how the world works, there were two places to look. You either went to the Bible and saw what God said. Why is it like that? Because that's what God wanted it that way. God made it that way, and then you were done. Or you looked at the writings of the ancient Greeks. And basically, as far as they were concerned, everything that needed to be known was known, and they were done. And it was the scientific revolution where scientists started to question this. And they said, wait a second, why should I just accept these rules of how the world works? Shouldn't I look? Shouldn't I experiment? Shouldn't I figure it out for myself? And question these ideas. So it starts, that's where this whole period, right? You had the Protestant Reformation, where people question the church. You have the scientific revolution, where people start questioning these quote-unquote rules about how the world works. These movements inspire the Enlightenment, okay? And in the Enlightenment, people are going to question how the government works, how society is divided up. Why should you be king? Because God made you king? That's not good enough. There has to be more to it. Why am I born a peasant and I have to die a peasant? Let me think about this. Does this make sense? The majority of Enlightenment thinkers that you're going to study, basically when they use reason, they determine that there should be limits on government power, and that authority comes from the people. The exception is Hobbes. All right, he is the only one who is going to believe in absolute rulers. He's going to believe in monarchy and absolute monarchy. But his belief in monarchy does not come from divine right. It, again, comes from reason. That's why he's considered an Enlightenment thinker. But we're going to take a look at him later. But generally speaking, if you happen to see somebody who talks about the rights of people, the limits on government power, things like that, that should key you into the idea that this is the Enlightenment. Again, the Enlightenment is all about questioning the traditional values. If you ever see the word tradition, just think old-fashioned values, past practices. And the Enlightenment is a critically important movement because the Enlightenment inspires the American Revolution. The Enlightenment and the American Revolution inspire the French Revolution. The Enlightenment, the American Revolution, and the French Revolution inspires revolutions in Latin America. One last thing to talk about is this idea of enlightened despots. This was, a despot literally means an absolute ruler, like a monarch, a king or a queen. What happens is many of the kings or queens would bring in Enlightenment thinkers, they would debate Enlightenment ideas, and some of those ideas appealed to them. They started to think of themselves as not just monarchs that ruled in God's name, but they thought of themselves as servants of the people. And many of these enlightened monarchs tried to reform society and make, society better and to serve the people more. Now, don't get it twisted. Those ideas about that, government should be by the people, for the people, that there should be limited money, those ideas they didn't accept. They still wanted to maintain their power. They still wanted to maintain their absolute authority, but they wanted to use their authority to serve people. That's the idea of an enlightened despot, if you ever see that come up. All right, these are the main Enlightenment thinkers that you have to know. Like I said, Hobbes is the exception to the rest of the rulers. Hobbes is the one Enlightenment thinker who says, well, look, forget, toss out divine right. Let's push that aside. Why should we have a ruler? Well, we need an all-powerful ruler because people are bad. They're evil. They compete with each other. They're constantly fighting. We need an all-powerful ruler to maintain society, to maintain rules, to maintain order. It's good for people to have an all-powerful government. So he is the one, he was a fan of absolute rule. And like I said, but he's using his reason to come to that. So that's Hobbes. However, the rest of the Enlightenment thinkers are all more focused on limiting the power of government and giving people more rights. Besides Hobbes, the other person that you really need to know who's really important is Locke. John Locke has this revolutionary idea about natural rights. Natural rights is the idea that people have the right to life, liberty, and property. And this is a natural right. What do I mean by that? It means it's a right you're born with. Nobody gives you this right. You don't have a right because you're a citizen or because of the country you're born into or something. You don't have to earn these. As soon as you were born as a human being, you were born with the right to know that you have a right to live, that nobody should be able to kill you, nobody should be able to throw you into a prison for no reason, and no one should be able to take your stuff. That you have a right to life, liberty, and property. No one, and the role of government, according to John Locke, the role of government is to protect these natural rights. And here's the thing, if a government doesn't protect these natural rights, you have the right to get rid of that government, and you have the right to rebel. These are really important ideas that are going to have a huge influence on France. They're also going to have a huge influence on America, so make sure you know the name John Locke. The other Enlightenment thinkers are Montesquieu. He had this idea of separation of powers. This idea that if you have a ruler who has too much authority, if you give all the power to one person, that is going to create corruption. That person is going to start being, they're going to be bad. They're going to use that power for tyranny. They're going to hurt people with that power. You have to make sure you separate power. So for example, in America, we have separation of powers. That means we elect a president, but we don't elect a dictator. We don't elect a king. Our president has limited power. For the president to get something done, he needs to work with Congress. Our president needs to, if the Congress and the president want to pass a law, it can't be an unconstitutional law because we also give power to the Supreme Court to overrule laws. This is this idea. We have 3 branches of government, so no one branch has too much power. The idea is that all branches of government check each other's power. That's the word for it. They keep each other in check. They keep, as long as the power in the government is separated into different branches, no one can get too powerful. That's going to make sure there isn't any corruption. Voltaire, he's pretty straightforward. He believed in freedom of speech, freedom of religion, this idea that the church and state, that the government should not force you to be a certain religion, because this was kind of this was standard operating procedure, that most of the time there would be a government. For example, in Spain, everybody had to be Catholic, and if you weren't Catholic, if you were Jewish or a Muslim, you were kicked out of the country. That was pretty standard practice. Voltaire is the first one. He's going to start calling that into question, this idea that government shouldn't be involved in religion. Rousseau, his idea of general will, that's the idea that whatever law you pass should make the most people happy, that you should try to pass laws thinking about what would make life better for your citizens. And the last one is Wollstonecraft. She believes that women should have equal rights. Unfortunately, nobody listens to her because we don't get equal rights for ages, but she gave it a shot. All right, with that, I'm going to leave off. That is the first video. Please look at my other videos to catch you up on the other topics. All right, thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.